This is Todd with Todd's Dodge Garage, returning with you here. It's been a little while since we posted a video. Things have been a little bit busy and crazy. As you can see, we are not at the shop. We are in my home shop where I do restorations work under the business name Todd's Restorations. We specialize in first-gen Dodge Charger and components. What we have here today is a Powerpack out of a 66 or 7 Dodge Charger. This is what controls the electroluminescent lighting that you find in your instrument clusters. This little box will take 12 volts DC. It converts it to 330 volts AC alternating current. You want to be very careful handling this little device. It is very dangerous and it puts out a lot of voltage. This one was sent to me for repair. Customer claims it does not work. Let's go ahead and take a look. The way that we're going to hook this up is we have our power supply. This would be no different than a car battery, 12.5 volts. Simply hook up your power lead to the orange wire that's on the Powerpack. Hook up the black wire, negative, to the case. If this is working, you'll have 300 volts plus at the white wire. You do not want to touch the white wire. Got our multimeter here set an alternating current. We're going to go ahead and just see what this thing puts out. Well, it looks like about 2.7 volts. That is not a lot of voltage. Let's check it again here. There we go. 195. Now, it's very common when the capacitor in these Powerpacks fails that, as you can see, the multimeter counting down. As it heats up, the voltage drops. We're at 181, 180, and we're still dropping. So we automatically know the capacitor is bad right off the bat. However, we have to check all the components. So in order to do that, we have to open up the back. It just has this paper insulator on the back, a couple little push rivets. Just take those out. You can look up the specs on all these different resistors, but you just set your ohm multimeter to ohms, and you know, here we have a sheet with all the different ohms resistance, so we can check each resistor in line to make sure that this is the only thing that's wrong with the Powerpack is the capacitor. So now this one should be about 50 ohms. We're at 47. That's well within spec. This square resistor, that's about a 2 ohm resistor plus or minus. So we're just going to go ahead and check that. .2. Okay, so that's within spec. This is a 1.5K resistor, which is buried down in there. It's the little brown one. We'll go ahead and test that. Right there, 162. So we are good. So at this point, most of the electronics have tested good within the Powerpack. The one thing that we still have left is the coil. And there is a way to test that. These terminals are numbered. There's 4 terminals across here. And they're numbered 1 through 4. So if you measure across terminals 1 and 2, which would be from the square resistor to the orange wire, you should have about 0.4 ohms of resistance. Here we have 0.3, right on ticket. Now if we check terminals 2 and 3. We're supposed to have right around 5.7. 5.463, that's just fine. Now if we check between terminals 4 and ground, which is considered terminal 5, if you will, but it's ground, we should have something like 99 ohms. We've got 90. That's good. So we know that the Powerpack is good. That also tells us that the capacitor is bad. What we're going to do now is go ahead and cut the capacitor out. And what I do is I just snip it. And then I have a torch that I heat up the solder on the case. And that goes a little bit quicker than trying to do it with a soldering iron. And since it's bad anyways, doesn't really matter. But there's your capacitor right there. Now, we have a new capacitor, which is the correct one. It's a 330 volt capacitor. It's actually good, to 2000 volts direct current. There's a part number on it, which is very hard to see, 940C20S47K-F. If you have a Powerpack and need a capacitor, that is the capacitor. So basically you just put it right back in. When you solder it to the white wire terminal, which is number 4, you want to be very, very careful that you do not put too much heat to terminal 4. One of the coil wires is soldered to that. It is very, very thin, and the terminal is mounted in a plastic casing. And if you melt that plastic casing, you will end up with a Powerpack that does not work. Ask me how I know. So we're just getting the wire wrapped around terminal number 4. And I'll go ahead and trim it here shortly. I just wanted to get that set. Give it a snip. There we go. Okay. Now we're actually just going to take our soldering iron or soldering gun, whatever you have, and we're going to solder that back in place. Again, we want to be very careful that you're not putting too much heat on the terminal. I actually touch the terminal of the capacitor, and then I let the solder flow to the terminal of the coil. So now you can see we have a real nice solder joint there. That's all you got to do. Now for this one, again, you just bend this over and you can cut off the excess right now. And again, I'll do it like this. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use your soldering gun. It takes a little bit longer, so I use my torch. And we just heat up the solder. And you'll see when the solder starts to liquefy. There it goes. Push the post down in, let the solder cool off. And then I have a little trick for you. There we go. So now, we're just going to pinch the end down so that it stays down, because we're going to heat it up again. This time we're going to use the soldering gun, because we've already got it in there, but we need to have a real good connection. And we've already got it hot because we used the torch. And so it'll heat up a lot quicker with the soldering gun. And there it goes. So now I'm just encapsulating that post, that end of the wire, in the solder. Now the solder's gotten hard. You want to be careful because obviously it's going to be a little bit hot. We've got our new capacitor installed in the right direction. This one happens to be a multi-direction, but some are one-way directional. You got to be careful. If we go ahead and plug this in now, we should see, if everything has been done properly, we should see, some voltage happening here. So we'll go ahead and hook this up again. Black goes to ground, or the case, which is where I have it. Red goes to the orange wire. Again, orange is 12 volts in from your car's wire harness. Okay, so now what we have is our capacitor is now soldered in place. And we know it's soldered securely. I know you probably can't see it on film, but I did not use an overabundance amount of solder. The thing that happens is people go solder crazy for some reason. They heat this terminal up, or this post, which is post number 4, and what happens is you can't see it, but it's supported by a plastic nipple, and that is part of the field, or the coil. And if you melt that, the wire that comes through there ends up shorting out, and there's nothing you can do. It's just junk at that point. So again, all you need to do is just get it hot enough for that capacitor wire to hold, and you're good. We've tested all the resistors. Everything checked out within spec. We'll go ahead now and put power to it. Depending on how long your Powerpack has been out of commission, these things are dusty and dirty, as you can see, and this one will get cleaned up before we put it in the car. But this generates a lot of heat. And this brown capacitor right here, this gets really hot. And if there's dust and dirt, you'll see a little bit of smoke coming out of here. It's not a big deal. So let's go ahead and hook up power to this now. And again, this, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is going to be around 300 volts alternating current. Okay, so please be careful if you're going to handle this or do it, yourself in your garage. I generally get at least one phone call a week from somebody that has been careless, and they're going to send me their Powerpack because they're not going to touch it again. So, again, from your car's wire harness, there's a gray plug. It plugs in. Orange is 12 volts in. We take our red 12 volt wire. We've got 12.5 volts coming in. Put that to orange. Your black lead goes to case ground. Now, interestingly enough, if this is working, it'll put out a hum. You'll actually hear a hmm very faintly, whereas we didn't hear that before. Now, you'll probably not be able to pick that up on camera. It's humming. So, let's see what we have for voltage. Now, if you remember, we were checking our resistors, so we have our meter set to ohms. We have to put it to alternating current. We can put our black lead to the case, and this is where we want to be a little careful. We don't touch that white wire with our fingers or anything like that. I'm touching it with my red post, and look where we're at, 300 volts, 300.3, and it's holding. You see that? So it's not dropping, whereas before we saw the voltage constantly drop, and it would have dropped down to 0. And what happens is when it's cold, it'll work. It'll put out, 275 volts alternating current, but as it heats up, the voltage drops, your lights dim out, and all of a sudden you have nothing. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but it is smoking. And that's just dust and stuff burning off the inside because it produces a lot of heat. But we're at 300 volts alternating current with no load. When you plug this in your car's harness and you have your instrument cluster, your clock, your AC controls, your shift indicator, everything hooked up, it's under full load. It's going to be floating around 230, 233 volts alternating current. No load, 300 is what you want to see, and you want to see it hold. This is holding just fine. So we have now just done a Powerpack repair. And really, that's as simple as it is. It's really not difficult. Take your time testing all the capacitors and the resistor. And it's generally this capacitor that goes bad. Thank you for watching. This is Todd with Todd's Dodge Garage. If you have any questions, go ahead and message me, and I will try to answer them as I can. Or you can visit me at Todd's Restorations. My website is www.toddsrestorations.com. My Facebook page is Todd's Restorations, where we specialize in first-gen charger and components. We'll see you next time.